Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and it's now or never. If we are going to get a Metroid Prime 4 Beyond Nintendo Direct, it basically has to happen within the next few days before previews come out on Friday, or it's too late. There will not be a Metroid Prime 4 Direct. I've been arguing for a Metroid Prime 4 Direct for months. I think it makes a lot of sense, but at this point, a lot of people have given up on the idea. I have not quite yet, but if we get past this week, then yeah, I will have to give up on it, because by that point, we'll be too close to the release of Prime 4, we'll also have to worry about the release for Kirby Air Riders. Game-specific Nintendo Directs don't happen that close to release for any of their games, and even now, for this week, they're kind of in territory that is a little unprecedented, but still only by a little bit, so it might still happen, and I have some reason to think so. And I do also want to point out that maybe it's not called a Direct, it might just be some kind of presentation where it's an extended look at the game. However you want to call it, however Nintendo brands it, I think there's still going to be some kind of presentation. Nintendo still has a lot to say about this game, so they're going to have to share that information. But what exactly will this presentation entail? Well, that's what we're getting into today. Now before going forward, let me point out that I do have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself enjoying this video or some of my other videos, I would very much appreciate your support, subscribing, liking the video, hyping the video. All of this makes a huge difference and it helps the video to reach a larger audience. So your support is immensely appreciated, but I at least thank you for coming by to watch today's video. So first, let's just talk about why I think a Metroid Prime 4 Direct is still on the table. So firstly, we've seen Nintendo do a Mario Kart World Direct, we've seen Nintendo do a Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, we've seen Nintendo do 2 Kirby Air Riders Directs. And we look at the launch year of Switch 1, and that launch year had several game-specific Nintendo Directs, or series-specific Nintendo Directs, and that's how this year has also kind of panned out, this launch year of Switch 2. And so I think Metroid Prime 4 is kind of like the odd one out. Now some people might point out that Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment didn't get a game-specific Nintendo Direct. No, it did not, but it's been featured in a partner showcase, it's gotten a lot of trailers, and it's not a game made by Nintendo, it's made by Koei Tecmo. It's a partner project, it's a spin-off release. It's not quite the same thing. Now some people might bring up Pokemon. Technically, Pokemon, sort of a partner project as well, because Game Freak isn't owned by Nintendo either. But then also on top of that, Pokemon Company handles all the marketing and messaging and larger presentations outside of Nintendo for the most part. And there have been multiple Pokemon Presents this year, so we've basically gotten the Pokemon Directs for Pokemon Legends ZA. The game's basically gotten that same kind of treatment, if not more so. So really, the only big game that is the odd one out right now is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And we already understand that Metroid Prime 4 Beyond must have one of the biggest budgets, biggest investments Nintendo's ever put into a game. It's been in development for such a long time, they've been hiring some of the most high quality talent here in the West for years at this point. So really, it would be very strange for Nintendo to not put together some sort of big presentation to share to the world, focusing on Metroid Prime 4 and telling us what it's all about. Not to mention, most of Metroid Prime 4's trailers up to this point have been very short. Usually full-length trailers get upwards of 2 or 3 minutes. A lot of the Prime 4 trailers have been less than 2 minutes, not even a minute and a half in many cases. Nintendo's been very tight-lipped about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Some people might perceive this as they don't want to talk about the game because they're ashamed of it, but I think it's quite the opposite. I don't actually think there's any real reason to think Metroid Prime 4 is something to be ashamed of. I think it's actually to the contrary. I think Nintendo's being very secretive about this game because it's a big deal game. It's something they're very proud of that they've been working on for a very long time, and they're about to show that to the world. And we have talked about when we would get closer to release, Nintendo would start to really ramp up the marketing for Metroid Prime 4, and that at least has already proven true. This last week, we did get a new trailer for Metroid Prime 4, and the consensus has been that it's been the best trailer yet. There's a lot more production put into it, the pacing, the music, the animations for all the stuff outside of the gameplay, like clearly they're putting a lot more effort into the marketing with the trailer. We've now seen holiday commercials using Metroid Prime 4 as the main element of that commercial. And we got the amiibo releases, the art book stuff. Like, there has been a lot of conversation about Metroid in lead up to Metroid Prime 4, as Nintendo suggested there would be during the September Nintendo Direct, when they talked about that the journey to launch would begin. And with the most recent trailer, they said the journey to launch continues. So they do have a plan here. We're seeing some of this come together. There's a plan, but I don't think we've seen the main attraction to this big journey to launch here, which I think is still going to be a Nintendo Direct. And there is actually something very strange going on right now. So we heard a few days ago that a lot of different review outlets, journalists, publication sites have been invited to a Metroid Prime 4 Beyond preview event. I was not invited. I am a YouTuber. I don't think Nintendo really invited any YouTube channels, but I really wish they did. I think I would have been able to cover the game really well. Oh well, I'm sure the people invited will do a fantastic job. But what's interesting about what a lot of these different people are saying is that they will share their coverage on Friday. They're all saying that, meaning most likely there's some sort of embargo where they are not allowed to share coverage on this game until Friday. So that's when previews are coming out for Metroid Prime 4. But that's actually a very strange day to have previews come out at the very end of the week. Why would this happen? When we take a look at other times Nintendo has allowed previews to come out that's been on either Tuesdays or Wednesdays. You look at Pokemon, you look at Donkey Kong, you look at Zelda, Tuesdays or Wednesdays, that's when previews come out. The fact that it's happening at the very end of the week leads me to think that they have something else about Metroid Prime 4 that will happen before that point. So I think earlier in the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, there will be a Metroid Prime 4 Nintendo Direct. That's what makes the most sense to me. That's really the most logical explanation as to why we're waiting this late into the week for previews. And maybe it's not branded as a Direct, but some sort of extended presentation. Whatever Nintendo calls it, this, I think, is going to happen this upcoming week. So that is essentially my first prediction, that there will be some type of Metroid Prime 4 presentation this week. And I'll point out one other little thing to consider here. With most of these game-specific Nintendo Directs, they tend to happen about 4 to 6 weeks before the game comes out. By this point, we're technically less than 4 weeks away from release, but if the Direct, or whatever it's called, happens earlier this week, it will be like 3 weeks and a half, which really wouldn't be that much less. I think this is an unprecedented situation because Nintendo has had a lot of different things coming out right now, a lot of overlap with their marketing. Like we had Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, then we have Pokemon Legends ZA, we just got Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, now we're going to get Kirby Air Riders, and then Metroid Prime 4. A lot of the marketing and previews and reviews, all that stuff, there's been a lot of conversation about these games, and it's been overlapping week to week, and there's been other announcements in between as well. We've gotten a new trailer for the Pokemon DLC, financials have come out, we got an extended presentation for a massive update to Animal Crossing, and more keeps coming out from Nintendo. Right now, they are just keeping up with the momentum, the brand awareness, the marketing. They are making sure people are talking about them all throughout this holiday season. Recently, we heard that Switch 2 has now apparently sold 12 million, meaning it's the fastest selling console of all time going into the holidays. So Nintendo looks primed, pun intended there, to be extremely successful this holiday, and a lot of that has to do with a lot of conversation about a lot of their projects, and that also is going to mean Metroid Prime 4 as their last big release of the year. So I'm sticking to it. We'll see what happens this week, but I think there's going to be some kind of presentation for Metroid Prime 4 telling us more about the game before previews come out this upcoming Friday, November 14th. But what will this presentation entail? So one thing that I think kind of needs to happen is a little bit of an explanation as to who Samus is, what the Metroid series is, what the Metroid Prime series is, and what happened in the initial Metroid Prime trilogy. A lot of people who are just getting into Metroid might have those questions, so there's going to be some explanation of the history of Metroid and Metroid Prime. That way people who watch the Direct will feel more comfortable about jumping straight into Metroid Prime 4. And let me just be clear, the way most Metroid games are structured is very similar to Super Mario or The Legend of Zelda, where you can jump in and play one game, and you don't really need a knowledge from prior games to understand what's going on with the story. That said, with the Metroid games, there is more depth to the story, so if you're unaware of that, I'm just letting you know, there is a good story with Metroid Prime 4, most likely. That said, I'm sure some people are going to want to play Metroid Primes 1, 2, and 3 before they play Prime 4. Not necessary, not needed, but I'm sure some people are going to have this desire. If we are going to get Metroid Prime 2 and 3 before Prime 4, it would be announced during this presentation. If it doesn't happen, then I think we should just not be expecting these games to come out anytime soon. And going back to the recent art book release, Kensuke Tanabe talked about how he would like to see Metroid Prime 2 remade so people can enjoy the multiplayer in a more modern fashion. So that may have been a hint that they want to do something more ambitious with Metroid Prime 2 and 3 later down the road, which would then maybe mean that they are not going to do some simple remasters similar to Pikmin 1 and 2 so people can play them before Prime 4 comes out. I don't want to give up on these games entirely, but I do gotta be honest, at this point, I'm kind of just leaning in the direction of they are just going to put out Prime 4, and 2 and 3 they will revisit someday, and it'll be a little bit more ambitious, which is exciting, but we're going to have to be patient on those. We'll see what happens though. Moving past all that stuff, I bet the Direct is going to open up with a pretty exciting trailer, a new one, and I also think the Direct will close with another exciting trailer. Very similar to how they handled the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of footage to scrutinize and analyze, and I sure will be doing that when this presentation does come. But I also think they're going to go and talk about certain elements here. Now, the tricky part is that they may not want to reveal that much, and perhaps that's one of the reasons why maybe they don't actually call this a Direct. They might do something that's a little bit more concise. But I do feel that they may want to go into more detail on who the Lemorn are. I think they may provide extra indication that there is something going on with the Lemorn where we're not entirely sure if they are our friend or our foe, as we've seen with the marketing, we've seen mentioned in the website and the magazine scans and such. And I've talked about this part, and I don't think everyone's really up to speed on this, but we have seen these creatures that have like these tentacles and multiple limbs that attack us. There are yellow ones in the forest, and there are like white albino ones in this icy hallway here. They have the same anatomy as the Lemorn ghost and the Lemorn character we've seen from the magazine scans. I think they're a part of the same species, but they must have had some sort of divergent path at one point. I've been referring to them as Berserk Lemorn. So I think these more wild, crazed Lemorn that are attacking you are the foes, and then the allies are the more peaceful looking ones. Maybe there's more to that. Perhaps even these peaceful looking ones that are intelligent could betray you later on to the story. There may be some hint towards that, but they're not going to spoil that during the presentation. But I do think they're going to tell us a little bit more, and we're going to see some new details about them in this presentation. But on that note, I have noticed some things that we've talked about in a few prior videos about the Berserk Lemorn, they're crazy ones, but we have seen that they can dodge your beam attacks in the forest, we have seen that they can swat away missiles, so even though they are berserk and crazed, they do seem to have some pretty good advanced defensive abilities, perhaps hinting at their increased intelligence compared to other enemies. And so we might see a little bit more of that, but I also think that they're going to go into detail on just enemies having more advanced abilities and options and intelligence, and so they may use this as an opportunity to talk about the value of the scan visor, scanning enemies, learning about their weaknesses and their behaviors so you can think of a better way or find a trick to better handle them. But beyond that stuff, I also think they will talk about Samus's moveset here. They're not going to spoil everything, but they'll tell us a little bit more about the psychic abilities. We'll get a little bit more indication of Samus's other weapons and how it's going to function. Is there going to be multiple beam weapons, or are we going to see more of a Metroid Prime 3 style where it slowly stacks as you progress throughout the game? What I think is going to happen is a little bit of a hybrid where we will see a stackable beam weapon that can improve, but there actually are other options beyond just missiles. We've already seen it from some of the gameplay. We have some screens where you can see with the D-pad that you can choose not just missiles, but also some sort of flame option, maybe the plasma beam, could be something else. And then to the right, we've seen more than just missiles for your ammunition. There's something else. So I do believe there are going to be more arm cannon attacks, so there's going to be variety there. That's what I'm thinking, and we'll get some more insight into that during this presentation. We've also seen some hints from the magazine scans that there's something to the ancient ruins. I think they're going to speak on the ancient ruins at least a little bit as well, though at least be mentioned. So we might get a little bit more of a hint as to what's going on with that stuff. Perhaps we'll learn about more things we can do in the desert and how that connects the overall world, which, by the way, yeah, I think they're going to detail the vast world in Metroid Prime 4. They're going to give us an understanding of how this game is structured, the overall gameplay loop. They're not going to spoil everything, but they're going to give us somewhat of an understanding of how this is all put together. Some people think this game is open world. I think some people are confused. Whenever they see big areas, a lot of people just refer to that as open world, but technically open world doesn't mean that. Open world means that you can explore and do things in any order you so choose for the most part. There are vast areas, and there may be some openness as to how you go about doing things, so it might be a little of a blurred line situation here, but as we've talked about in multiple analysis videos, we've seen evidence that there is going to be that typical Metroid Prime style of gameplay, where there are going to be things blocked off, and you're going to have to find other ways around it, or obtain more power-ups to allow yourself to progress later on into the game. Like, we've seen that energy field around the tower, we've seen that bridge breaking down. So they're going to showcase this style of Metroid gameplay. They'll show the vast areas, they'll show how Viola works and how it connects, but they'll also show that you need to find more power-ups to progress and get deeper into the world and find other areas. And they may also talk about the speed of exploration with Viola, but perhaps also bringing up portals, something we've theorized before. We've seen actually several portals from different trailers. I think portals are actually going to be something that will help us to get to other places more quickly. It won't be quite fast traveling. That will really mitigate some of the criticisms people have about the common backtracking element to Metroid Prime games, or just Metroid games in general. Backtracking is a big part to the game, but they may be using portals and Viola to just speed up the overall flow of gameplay. So while there is backtracking, you are going to find power-ups and go back to other areas, and you'll then be able to solve more puzzles and progress even further into the world, but they're going to do it in a way that is faster and more interesting. And I might go so far as to say that this might be perhaps the most important part to the Direct, really highlighting the world of Metroid Prime 4, Vuros. Metroid Prime 4 is an adventure game, and I think an issue with the Metroid series is that it doesn't portray itself well to the masses. A lot of people just chalk it up as being another sci-fi shooter, but it's so much more than that. So this Direct really needs to do a great job of selling to people that Metroid Prime 4 is an epic, beautiful sci-fi adventure in an extremely interesting and varied world, with many interesting things to discover and find, and also being really fun to just explore. If Nintendo appropriately sells that concept, far more people are going to be interested in this game. And I also think they're going to have to show off one more boss. Maybe they tease Ridley, maybe they tease Kraid, showing off a boss from prior Metroid history. Maybe it isn't even technically Kraid, or maybe it isn't even technically Ridley, but something similar that's clearly inspired from those bosses. Putting that in there at some point in this presentation, I think, could be a really cool, exciting thing for Metroid fans, and just showing off one more boss fight that's clearly more grander, more epic than what we've seen so far could be a great way to showcase a big component to Metroid games, which are giant, epic boss fights. So I'm predicting we'll see at least one more in this presentation. Now, I do suspect that there will be some kind of crazy hook in this game, perhaps more than one. I don't think they're going to spoil everything. Like, for example, we've been theorizing that there is going to be time travel in this game. If time travel is going to be playing a major component to the overall gameplay, they might not actually reveal that. That might be something they hold back on. Of course, I'm going to be looking for evidence, and if we find it, we will talk about it. So another prediction I have is that they will showcase some pretty cool, exciting things, but there's also going to be stuff that they will hold back on because they want us to go into this game and have a lot to discover and find. And those are pretty much my predictions. Like I said, I think they're going to have an exciting trailer to open the show, and I think they're going to have another to close the show. And I think it's going to be a pretty epic Direct, maybe the best Direct of the year. We'll see. Metroid Prime 4 is my most anticipated game of the year, so a Direct about Metroid Prime 4 has a great chance at being my personal favorite presentation of the year, although that April Switch 2 Direct was pretty good. But what do you all think? Have you lost hope in there being some sort of larger Metroid Prime 4 presentation? Do you think Nintendo's still just heating up with the marketing? Is something happening this week? Let me know what you all think in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.